This is On Assignment.
VOA News. VOA News.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Alex Villarreal, coming to you from Washington with Philip Alexio. In this episode, we go first to Afghanistan to see how a lake resort is recovering after a devastating attack by the Taliban.
Also pushing back against the age-old practice of child marriage in India.
Our VOA reporter just back from Venezuela tells us about the re-election of President Hugo Chavez.
And from New York, we'll hear about the lives of the world's modern-day gypsies in America.
All that and more is coming up next as we take you on assignment.
In June, Taliban militants stormed a hotel at the Karga Lake Resort, which is a short drive from Kabul. At least 18 people died in the 12-hour assault, which the Taliban says was punishment for partying, drinking alcohol, and other un-Islamic activities.
But the once popular resort is now making a comeback, though the threat of the Taliban still looms. I got the story from reporter Bethany Matta in Kabul. Bethany, this was an extremely violent assault. At least 18 people killed over a span of 12 hours. The top U.S. commander in Afghanistan called it unspeakably brutal. And these images, as you say in your piece, they really are difficult to forget, these images.
Like many of the Taliban's high-profile sieges, the Karga Lake attack played out on TV. Viewers who witnessed it will never forget the images of people clinging to the wall of the Spajme restaurant at Karga Lake as attackers on the terrace above carried out their killing spree.
It's very much a tough sight to shake. How has it affected people in the area?
I think a lot of people here are kind of used to attacks like that. In Karga itself, I think it's definitely taken away from their tourism industry. And people are still really scared, but like I said, you know, people, and myself included, you're always kind of prepared for the next attack, and that's just the reality of life here.
The floor remains stained from pools of blood. The bullet holes have not yet been repaired, and areas bombed out by the attackers' hand grenades can still be seen. While the restaurant has returned to serving officials and middle to upper class Afghans, the number of guests is down by more than 50%. Asadullah is the restaurant's manager.
There are two kinds of people. There are those who have lived through 30 years of war. The attack has not affected these people. But the other people who have not lived through the war, they're scared.
The ones that haven't seen so much of the war, I think it affects them more so. The older ones that have been fighting for most of their lives, well, they're definitely used to it.
Right, you talk about being prepared for the next attack. What is the threat level in the area now?
We don't know, and I think that is the scariest thing for Afghans, is that they don't know. You know, you'll have a lot of people talk about like the Taliban times, or even, you know, like during the Civil War and stuff, and that Afghans knew what was going to happen. Like you knew if you went outside that something could happen. But it's just getting increasingly insecure here, and part of the problem is that you just don't know. You don't know when and you don't know where. And Karga, I think, was the perfect example of that.
Nabi, a cook at one of the lakeside restaurants, was also working the night of the attack.
My family is happy I have a job and can go to work, but security-wise, of course, all Afghans are worried when someone in their family leaves the house.
While some Afghans do leave their home and risk a trip to Karga Lake, there are many others staying at home. It's another reminder that nearly 11 years after the U.S.-led invasion, security fears still overshadow much of Afghanistan's daily life.
And how difficult is it for you to get people to talk to you and to share their stories? Do they fear Taliban retaliation?
It depends where you're at. The north, you have US-backed militia. They're called like the Afghan police and Arabaki and stuff like that. And they're also a huge threat to the people. So the people are really scared of them. And a lot of times they won't talk because they'll be tortured. In Kandahar, you have the Taliban. You also have ISAF, and you also have people like General Razik, who is also known, you know, he's pretty much the government himself. So when you go places like Kandahar, yeah, I had an extremely difficult time getting people to talk there. If they're accused of, you know, any association with the Taliban, then ISAF will go in. And if the Taliban think that they have any relation to ISAF, then the Taliban will get them. So really the civilians, you know, they have it very, very hard.
Our thanks to Bethany Matta, who spoke to us from the Afghan capital.
Well, we're taking a short break right now, but on the other side, how the practice of child marriage is changing in some parts of India. You're watching On Assignment. Child marriage is an ancient practice in India, and despite being illegal, it continues today in rural areas. Nearly half of Indian women are married before the age of 18, and many become brides much younger. VOA's Aru Pandey is looking at this story and joins us now. Aru, I know there is at least one group out there trying to stop this practice, but how are they trying to go about it?
Well, this one particular group that I talk about in my story, Childline, it's an NGO. They run a hotline. So girls or friends of girls who might be in a marriage or be locked into a marriage agreement that they don't want to be in, they call this NGO. They say, look, I want to get out of this situation. I don't want to get married. I want to continue my education. And this organization then goes to the parents and says, look, here's the situation. First of all, child marriage is illegal. Second of all, let's give this young girl a chance to continue her studies. And if the parents are not convinced, then this group goes to the police and they file a criminal complaint. And the police takes it from there and deals with the parents. And this group then provides the support to this child once they want to pursue their education to get this marriage arrangement, you know, annulled or canceled. And then works with local village councils and administration officials to make sure that this girl can continue her education to further her studies and not be locked into something like this, which again is an illegal practice in India, but still going on in many rural areas.
Okay, well, let's take a look at her story.
Bitika Das is concentrating on her schoolwork. The 16-year-old girl from a small village in West Bengal state knows this opportunity to study is one that was nearly lost 2 years ago when her parents arranged her marriage to a young man.
If I got married then, my education would have stopped at 9th grade. I could have achieved nothing in the future with an incomplete education. In my husband's family, I was not going to get good respect.
After her parents' refusal to cancel the marriage arrangement, Bitika contacted the Murshidabad office of the Childline India Foundation. The group runs a 24-hour hotline providing counseling and other help to children in crisis. Childline activist Devika Ghoshal led the team that helped stall the marriage of then 14-year-old Bitika. The group works with local police to lodge criminal complaints against parents who do not comply with the law banning child marriage. Activists then focus on ensuring that a young girl is able to continue with her education.
The girls say they want to study further. They are closer to the media and they know that society, the world is marching ahead. Everyone is advancing. So they too want to move ahead. But mostly because of poverty and partly for some other social reasons, the parents want to marry them off in their childhood.
By marrying off their young daughters, poor families can reduce their financial burden and in some cases avoid paying a higher dowry to the child's potential in-laws. Amina Begum had hoped to marry off her 14-year-old daughter, but the marriage was thwarted by activists and her daughter returned to school.
Where shall I get a suitable groom for her if I don't marry her off right now and let her study further, and finally she turns 25?
The United Nations has already raised awareness of the consequences of child marriage in India, citing the higher dropout rates of child brides and their greater risk of being physically and sexually abused. But the effect can be more grave. UNICEF says girls between the ages of 15 and 19 are more likely to experience delivery complications during childbirth, and that neonatal, infant, and child mortality rates are much higher for young mothers. For now, young girls like Bitika are being spared this fate as they rise up against a centuries-old practice.
I know when I marry in the future, I will go to a good family, and because of my strength and job, I will get respect there. They will not be able to neglect me.
This teenager has finished at the top of her class and has been recognized by the president for her courage. She now has a different vision of her future, one that involves becoming a school teacher. Aru Pandey, VOA News, Washington.
Aru, how big a problem is this outside of India?
It's a huge problem. It's not just limited to India. It's throughout South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa as well. And just last week, the UN released a report that basically said that 67 million girls, which is about 1 in 3 in 2010, was married under the age of 18, and they expect that number to more than double in the coming decades. So it's definitely a big problem, and they're hoping to eliminate child marriage as much as they can by the year 2030 through awareness, education, and enforcing some of these laws that actually ban child marriage.
All right, VOA's Aru Pandey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take another short break now. Coming up, our reporter gets a close look at Venezuela's recent presidential election. You're watching On Assignment. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez won re-election recently with 54% of the vote, defeating former state governor Enrique Capriles.
But this election was closer than previous polls, as VOA's Brian Padden told us after his return from Caracas, where Chavez was declared the winner on October 7th.
The candidate Hugo Rafael Chavez with 54.52% of the votes.
Enrique Capriles, for his part, won 44.97% of the votes. After the announcement, President Chavez's supporters danced in the streets as fireworks lit up the sky. Javier Medina says he is celebrating because Mr. Chavez belongs to his people, the poor and the working class.
He is the president of the poor, not president of the rich.
Capriles conceded the election and sent his congratulations to Mr. Chavez, but he also asked that the president take into consideration the views of all the people when governing.
Hay un país que está, pues, que tiene dos visiones.
There's a country that sees two visions, and that to be a good president means to work for all Venezuelans.
President Chavez held a press conference, and in it he indicated a number of things. He indicated he's open to dialogue. He's indicated that he's willing to talk to the opposition about policies. The opposition, some in the opposition, see their united strength in this election. Even though they didn't win, they had a solid performance. Sees this as a unique and historic opportunity whereby to engage Mr. Chavez on these policies. On the other hand, in the same press conference, President Chavez said he's not going to change who he is. He sees this election, 54% of the vote, as a mandate to continue his socialist policies.
And why do we see this divide along the economic lines? Can you explain a little bit about Chavez and his policies and who's benefiting the most?
Well, one thing when Chavez came into power is he did fulfill his promise. And he said at this recent press conference, he has been consistent in his beliefs and his policies from the day he entered. He is a committed socialist. He has taken the vast oil wealth of Venezuela and spread it to the poor, opening universities, providing free housing, providing low-cost food, medical care to the poor. And so many of his core constituencies, those who are not well off, are very adamant supporters. Capriles wanted to get more voters from Chavez this time who were discontent with issues beyond socialism, crime on the street, and which is very bad, and the lack of personal freedom, a lack of transparency in government.
In Venezuela, government offices and workers are routinely used to support President Chavez's political campaign. Venezuelan Congresswoman Maria Corina Machado says this is just one example of how Chavez is abusing his power to undermine the democratic process.
People perhaps think that because Venezuela has had 19 elections during the Hugo Chavez era, there might be a democracy in Venezuela. The fact is that there is no separation of powers, there's no freedom of speech, there's no respect to private property.
Chavez supporters say decisions to seize underutilized property from rich landowners are made to best serve the public interest.
And what's next for the opposition?
I think the opposition is seeing this election as a constructive step in a more of a long-term process. They've consolidated, the groups united, they made a significant strides in terms of vote. This on the heels of the 2010 elections where they won a number of legislative elections. Their next goal is the next legislative elections. If they can continue to trend upward, continue to win more votes, they could gain more power in the legislature and hopefully in the next presidential election be more in position to compete on equal terms.
Thanks again to VOA's Brian Padden. They are known by many names: gypsies, travelers, and Roma, which is how they prefer to be described. But no matter what you call them, Roma are among the most widely dispersed yet least understood ethnic groups on Earth.
Romani culture and its influences are easily found in New York City, where thousands of the world's estimated 12 million Roma make their home. Our VOA reporter in the Big Apple, Adam Phillips, looked into Roma life recently and talked with On Assignment's Lisa Vora.
Romani-style music and celebration are going full force at the Drone nightclub, the epicenter of a 3-week New York Gypsy Festival. Producer Mehmet Dede says the festival is geared to those like him who are gypsy at heart.
I would like to think that in New York City we are all a little bit of gypsy.
Just as the Roma have been influenced by the lands where they have lived, New York has been shaped by the immigrant groups that settled here, including the Roma.
Originally, the Roma are from India. At least that's where sort of DNA testing has put them. And they migrated north probably about 1,000 years ago and sort of spread out all over Europe. I mean, there are many in southern Europe, as one might expect if they're coming from Asia and Africa. And now they're mostly in the Balkan states, Eastern Europe, and of course they penetrated into France, Italy, and farther west into England, where they call them travelers.
Gypsy spirit seems to work for New York's downtown music scene.
An energy that I don't find in other kind of music.
It's kind of like a European blues.
They can feel music and you feel that they love playing.
A lot of people on the street were talking about you can just feel the music, so you were there for the vibrations, for the energy. Just tell me a little bit about what makes their music so unique.
Well, it's very exultant. It's a great beat. People love to dance. It's almost like a trance music. And there's a beat. There's kind of an improvisational quality to it.
Ismail Lumanovsky leads the New York Gypsy All-Stars. He sees himself as a cultural ambassador.
By playing Romani music, I want to offer the New York audience a very free way of looking at music.
Roma have considered themselves outsiders, and they have often been persecuted. They're frequently stereotyped as unkempt and dishonest. An estimated 500,000 Roma were murdered by the Nazis during World War II. Today, anti-Roma violence is on the rise in Western and Southern Europe. Even in the U.S., some immigrant Roma fear prejudice. Gelbart's mother worked at a bank.
She just wasn't going to tell people that she's a gypsy because, as she put it, the minute something goes missing, who do you think they're going to blame?
That's amazing that she's still worried about that.
It's true. There's still a sense among many immigrants, even in the second generation, that they should just wear their gypsy very lightly in public, that they should be as gypsy as they want to be within their communities and with their homes, but sort of soft pedal the idea that they're Roma in public.
Still, many native New York Roma, like dancer Piroshka Oratz, are proud to maintain some traditions that Roma are well known for, including fortune-telling.
Your own personality is basically very happy.
Roth says, in spite of globalization, there will always be Roma.
Keeping the important things alive, you know, love and generosity, sharing with family, music and the other arts.
And to judge by the increasing popularity of gypsy-style music, dance, and even fashion, Roma will be part of the Big Apple's flavor for years to come.
It was such a fun piece. Did you do any dancing when you were there with the gypsies?
I tapped my foot very vigorously.
So some dancing.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving us your time.
Sure. Thank you very much for your curiosity.
Again, that was VOA's New York reporter Adam Phillips with our very own Lisa Vora. Now to Kenya, where along the coast several years ago, one woman observed children making toys out of an unusual material, the many flip-flops that were washing up on shore.
So she started a business making fashionable products from flip-flops, helping to create jobs and clean up Kenya's waterways. Jill Craig has the story from Nairobi.
The Nairobi-based Flip-Flop Recycling Company is thought to be the only business of its kind and scale in the world. The company makes about 100 different products from recycled flip-flops. Some of the jewelry has even been down the catwalk at the recent Paris Fashion Week. Founder Julie Church says that the goal of her company is to create products that people want to buy, then make them interested in the backstory. And much of that story appears to be in the flip-flops' journey to Kenya. Church says that because of ocean currents, rubbish washes up on Kenyan shores from as far away as Indonesia.
Yeah, the Indian Ocean is the poor man's ocean. It's where most poverty in the world is in, and it's in quite a confined area. And we're taking even the poor man's waste and giving it a value.
Women at the coast collect the flip-flops as they wash up onto the shores and then sell them to the company. Workers wash these flip-flops, many of which have been repaired several times and have likely had several owners. Artisans then glue together the various colors, carve the products, sand and rewash them, and finally send them to the shop. American artist Kelly Eberhardt came to visit the retail store after hearing about it from a friend.
So from an artist to an artist standpoint, I think it's made me really respect artists so much more all over the world, and my work as well, because it really is, and the final product does mean a lot more than what you think it does in the beginning.
Dan Wamboi is an employee who takes great pride in his unique form of artwork.
Okay, I feel like a celebrity because it will take like someone who comes all the way from Europe or Asia or America to come and buy something that I've made with my hands. That means that my work is going out of the continent and all over the world. Surely makes an impact, and yeah, I'm proud of it.
To those who don't believe that ridding the oceans of flip-flops can have much of a larger conservation impact, Church says she's taking it one step at a time.
I would say that in a perfect world, we should have no rubbish. So whatever we're doing is better than doing nothing, because it's only going to get more and more and more.
The company employs around 40 people at its Nairobi facility. Last year, the company recycled more than 10,000 kilos of used flip-flops. Jill Craig for VOA News, Nairobi.
And that does it for our show today. Join us again next time when we get a look at the changing lives of the world's working women.
We'll also tell you the story of motorcycle riders from China coming to America to see the countryside on some big, loud Harley-Davidson touring bikes.
That's going to be exciting. You can catch all of our episodes online at voanews.com and on Facebook and YouTube.
For all of us here on assignment, thanks for watching. Goodbye from Washington.